Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Stool podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. This is episode number 2. My name is Robin Lewis from robinlewismakes.com. I'm joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks and Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio. We live stream the recording of this podcast every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time or UTC plus 10, or you can watch or listen to it later on YouTube or SoundCloud. I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. We'll get to your comments as much as possible as we go, but feel free to chat amongst yourselves. The idea with this podcast is that this is a place for people to meet. So before we get into this week's topic, let's do a quick rundown of what everyone's working on. So Joey, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I've been working on a cherry altar, Buddhist altar. So that is almost finished. Half of it's finished. I just finished the last coat of Danish oil this morning, and I just have so it's like it's a very tall table pretty much, and underneath it there's a little cupboard that I've yet to finish that is on wheels, and I guess they're going to keep like incense and things like that in it, and so that's almost ready to go. And the other more interesting thing for me is I'm just about finished my kitchen for my house. So that will be going in tomorrow morning. First thing in the morning, I'm going to load the van up, drive up the road and get my kitchen finished off and a couple of odds and ends. So that is cool.
When you say drive, like all the carcasses made, and you just, okay, right.
We just finished today. So I just need to throw them in the van, set them in place, and do a little bit of painting, and then we're just about ready to move in. So nice. That is good. Yeah.
Cool. George, how about you?
I've been doing a few things here. So I did a shop stool to kind of launch off the podcast and make the announcement on my channel. So that was just a really quick rush thing that I didn't really measure, but it came together nicely and people are reacting really well, which is good. And on top of that, I've got a client build on, which is an outdoor table. It's just being made out of black butt, and pretty simple, slatted top, which is something a bit different for me. And everything else is basically on the back burner until I get these two out of the road.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. For myself, I am working on that, which you can just see behind me there. That is a fruit bowl on its side. I recently came into a whole lot of new timber, and while I was transporting it over, a piece of the bark fell off, and I've always wanted to try this. So I just doused the thing in epoxy, and then there's 2 pieces of jarrah on either side, which are just the feet and ends. So it's pretty simple. It's going to be in the video, but I feel like the last couple of projects that I've done have all been bigger projects than I'm used to. So I just kind of wanted an easy win. And then as well as that, I'm doing, I've just got them here in front of me. They are these bottle openers that I sell on my website. With Christmas coming up, just getting a few of those sort of in stock so that I can hopefully sell as many as possible.
That piece of bark, so you've poured epoxy over it. What's the finish like just by pouring it over? Are you planning to sand it? Because I imagine it's a bit rough and kind of furry, or is it come out pretty smooth?
The actual chunks of the bark are they're pretty big chunks. So it's a pretty, I guess you'd say, solid, the pieces are solid. So it's not furry. But then at the same time, it's not particularly nice to the touch. But I guess the idea is that it's going to be the underneath, so it's not really too much of an issue. But what I am going to do is do some kind of like a spray. I'll probably use a matte finish just to knock that shine down, because it's really shiny and it looks super tacky.
Yeah. It looks plastic. Huh?
Was it a West Systems resin or?
Yeah, which I found out the hard way. You go through a lot of epoxy, and using West Systems.
It's an expensive way of doing it.
That's probably not the way to do it. Yeah, I think I must have used about 10 pumps just for that. So, at the end of the day, as I say, I've always wanted to try it. So it was more of an exercise in discovery. I probably wouldn't do it again.
Interesting to see how it holds together. Like once it starts to dry, or if it's fully locked in, it will be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. So my theory is that because of, it's all coated now in resin, it shouldn't be too bad. Hopefully, at least as it shrinks, it's going to shrink uniformly. But who knows? This is actually going to be a Christmas present for family. So if it does fall apart,
You just call it rustic, yeah.
They can't disown me.
I've got the same kind of concerns for my bath. Like we've used it a few times now, and everything's all good. But it's like, who knows what's going to happen?
Was that cedar or Western?
Yeah, I use cedar.
At least it's somewhat.
Yeah, it's
repelling,
and it's kind of stable. Like I think I picked cedar because it was so stable. As stable as I think I could get, given all the crazy angles I was going to cut. But in hindsight, I would go back and use the hardest wood I could find, probably maple or something. So it makes it easier to shape.
The shaping would be hard. But
the epoxy was so hard. Right? What was that?
Paulownia would be a good little choice because it's.
What is that?
It's a really light hardwood. It's one of the lightest woods there are. But it's used a lot in boat building because it's actually resistant to water and it doesn't wick it up like Western red cedar does. But harder to work.
Yeah, right. Yeah, cedar was easy to shape, but when I had the epoxy, like it wouldn't grind away as quickly. So I'm having these issues of getting big scallops next to the epoxy and really issuous.
So tonight we're going to be discussing a topic that Joey mentioned, and he's going to have a pretty cool story for it in a second. But we're basically talking about timber and how it operates and how the sort of the precautions that you need to take when using it outside. And one of the main reasons we want to talk about this is the fact that down here in our corner, there's some pretty intense sun. I've lived in London for a few years, and I can tell you straight up, the people in Europe don't know what sun damage is when it comes to timber. So we sort of want to discuss what precautions you need to take and what this extreme UV does to timber. So I'll hand over to you, Joey, just to start off with that story that you had.
Well, it's good that you were just talking about that. So maybe I'll talk about the UV first because I've done a little bit of research. I will refer to my notes here. So we have 40% higher UV than the same latitude in the Northern Hemisphere, which seems pretty outrageous.
I wouldn't have thought it was that far. Jeez, that's intense.
So there's three main reasons. That is, the Earth is an elliptical orbit, and we're kind of tilted as we're orbiting the sun. And so in our summertime, we are much closer to the sun than the Northern Hemisphere is during their summer. So we're just physically closer, so we're hotter. Second reason is we've got just about no air pollution. So there's nothing to stop the UV coming through. Third reason is that the ozone layer gets a lot thinner in summer around Antarctica, and so it thins out the whole ozone area around, especially around heading out towards New Zealand. So the ozone layer gets thicker during winter and then thinner in summer. Just a cycle that it does. So
now, isn't the ozone layer back in the 90s when that hole was created? Wasn't that around here as well?
Yeah. So everyone thought there was, oh my God, there's a hole. We've stuffed the planet up. Later, they realized that it's actually a big cycle, and the hole is always there to a certain degree, but then it expands and contracts, and it's kind of like the planet breathing, essentially, in a really layman's way of talking about it. So that is reason, and a couple of other fun facts about how crazy our sun is. There is a UV index, international UV index, with 10 being considered extremely high UV. So in the Mediterranean, in the middle of summer, they will have a 9 or a 10 a couple of times a year. And in Florida, in the States, they will get a 12 a couple of times a year. And here in the northern half of New Zealand, we will get a 14 pretty much every day in summer. So we're up to, in Queensland, we're 13 or 14 already, and it's not even in the middle of summer. Yeah. Yep. And I think, Robin, last week when we were chatting, or the other day, you mentioned that you were in the sun cancer
capital.
of Australia.
Yep.
Well, I will trump you and say that we are the skin cancer capital of the world. So
Now that amazes me. My view of New Zealand, when I think of New Zealand, I think of Lord of the Rings. Like the rolling green hills, it's real nice and cool and temperate. I do not see New Zealand as being that harsh.
Just wear sunblock when you go. Oh, you know.
There's funny you say that. There's a big thing in the news at the moment where all their sunblocks are not as strong as they are rated for. So someone's getting in trouble for that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that in mind, how crazy our sun is, the other day, about a week ago, I was emailed a few pictures of an outdoor dining set from a client who wanted me to restore it. So I got these pictures through, and everything screams terrible about this table. You guys have seen the pictures.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
This guy had, I don't know if I can describe it. But I will say that this table was never going to last outside, let alone inside. I mean, it's just so badly constructed with big cantilevers and steel brackets stopping the timber from being able to move. And it's just, so sanding it back and putting a new clear coat on the top was not the problem. It was the whole thing was the problem. So what do we want to talk about first? I guess we should talk about finishes.
Well, I know you also wanted to talk about the timbers as well.
Well, okay, yeah. I'm not sure where to start with it.
I was just going to say I'm very interested to hear because I don't know. I don't have very much knowledge on this. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll go through
finishes could be a good one to start with.
Okay, you want to go through? Okay. I did a little bit of research on this because brushed up myself as well. Let's see. I've got my finishing page here. So there is a product called Sikkens, Sikkens. They are a specialty outdoor and to a certain degree indoor timber finishing product. They've got it's a stain. They've got 9 colors, and they have really heavily added UV blockers in it.
Yeah.
So the stuff's designed to stop the sun doing what it does. That being said, it still peels off the side of buildings. I've seen it. So good stuff, but you've got to do the upkeep on it.
Maintenance is crazy on it. That's what I've used on my veranda and patio.
Yeah.
And that's just made out of treated pine, and it's doing a great job considering it's pine. But every year I have to go in, sand off, and reapply some areas and stuff. So it's good, but not.
Yeah, I was having a read through their kind of care instructions and application instructions, and that alone is about 4 pages of what not to do. And so, I don't think many people would ever have the perfect conditions for applying the product the way that should be. So kind of they write themselves out of a warranty, I guess. But what was I going to say? So the good thing about that stuff is one of their products is called Cetol BLX Pro. So a new one, it's water-based, and that is breathable. And they say it will expand and contract with the timber, which is interesting for a film finish. So it's not just going to be like a glass encased piece of timber that's not going to do anything.
Yeah, that actually plays into one of the notes that I kind of took down here, and that is that wood moves a lot more when it's outside than when it's inside. So the finish that you do choose has to be able to accommodate that. So a lot of people that apply a film finish will come back in a year or two and they'll have it flaking off.
Yep.
And that's because a lot of these outdoor finishes still aren't designed for the extreme movement that you get outside.
That's right.
It's more about if it's a project that's sitting outside undercover and sheltered, that's a different story. But if it's a full outdoor exposed to the wind and seasons, most film finishes fail. Yeah,
they actually go on to say that even talking about other finishes, the Sikkens brochure I was reading, or article really, it was saying that you should maintain your pieces before you see any damage. So once you see some edge damage or flaking, it's actually too late to fix it up to a point where it's going to be blemish free. So it's interesting that even they're saying, look, just keep putting the product on, because otherwise you're kind of stuffed.
Do they give, I don't know if you mentioned this before, do they give a time on their, in a perfect condition, in a perfect application?
They say their stain, or they say in general, stains should be applied every 18 months, which I thought was...
that seems pretty excessive, isn't it?
It seems fairly long, because I was going to say, in my experience, like every 6 months, if you don't want to see damage.
And now when you say stain, are we talking about a stain or a finish?
A stain varnish thing.
Well, stain finish, stain oil. Because my next kind of product I was going to say on the front of my workshop, I've got vertical cedar boards, and I used a decking oil. And I've had to apply that, or when I first did it, I applied it every 3 months to try and keep it from fading, because it gets direct sun in the morning. And I've kind of slacked off on it. But I could see the deterioration over 3 months. So, and at the moment, it's probably had nearly 4 liters of oil on like a 3 meter wide door. And
just seems like such a waste. You're literally putting on, and it just
goes.
Yeah,
literally just kills the timber. So, what do you think about teak oil, Jordan?
Yeah, teak oil's got a bit of tung oil in it too, doesn't it? Usually.
Yeah, it's tung oil and linseed and varnish.
Yeah, thinned down.
Yeah,
I've used it a few times on tables that I've kind of, let's say, stripped off and reapplied a new finish to, and I haven't really been more sold on it than anything. But it's a good product because it has got the varnish in it. It will harden up a little bit, and it will do a little bit more protection than just pure linseed oil.
Yeah.
It's similar to Danish oil in that respect. But
yeah, as far as I know, the only difference between Danish oil and teak oil is the amount of thinners in teak oil is a lot more, because and maybe some people don't know why teak oil is called teak oil. I used to think that it was somehow pressed out of a teak tree, and they would like
that's what I would have assumed.
Yeah, but it's actually made for teak, because teak is very oily and it's notoriously hard to finish.
Yeah, it's super thin, so it'll wick in.
Yeah, and so they make a very thinner based product that actually kind of eats away the natural waxes very quickly and lets the hardness in the oil get into and actually penetrate before the natural oils kind of push it away. And generally, so because it has the way it's made, it actually ends up with a glossier finish. So when I'm talking to a client, I will say, if you want a natural oil finish, Danish oil is semi-gloss and teak oil is gloss. And you can kind of talk to them about it that way and essentially have the same finish. So yeah, that's actually, I saw on Osmo's website that they do a spray can of teak oil. If you're doing like slat back chairs or something that you can't get into, apparently you can spray on your teak oil. It looks a bit gimmicky to me, but if you only got one chair to do, I suppose you could use it.
I think the last thing I used oil on, I ended up putting it in one of my HVLP guns and spraying it because I got so sick of it. And then I would walk around my workshop, and I'd be slipping all over the place with all that air. And I learned the hard way not to ever spray oil.
I was going to say, how did you clean your gun?
Oh, it was one of my junk ones.
Oh,
It sits there, and it's forever now the oil gun, which was not a good idea.
Right. Because now, Robin, you just finished a barbecue cut.
Yeah.
What have you decided, or have you put anything on that?
Well, I was just about to say, and this ties into what you're saying about the chair with hard to reach places. I wouldn't even bother putting on a film finish in those hard to reach places because I guess when it's now I don't have a whole bunch of experience with outdoor furniture, but if the wood degrades, that kind of looks okay, but as soon as that film degrades, it's awful.
That's so true.
So on the top that I used a bit of polyurethane. I think it was about 25% polyurethane in a linseed oil terps mix. So there's a tiny bit of a film, but the rest of the stuff underneath, that you just got to do oil.
Interesting.
Because the other thing, which is an interesting note, especially here in Australia, where we have a lot of eucalyptus based woods, most of them, is that we have woods with a huge amount of tannins in it, way more than anywhere else. I mean, all wood has tannins, but when you start getting a film finish on outdoor furniture and it's started to kind of crack through and it gets wet, then your table starts to get stained with this dark discoloration, which it's impossible to get rid of. Yeah, that's another reason I don't like suggesting film finishes, because the upkeep, if it's not performed, which no one will do for the first, after the first year, it's just too much.
Yeah, I agree. Even with dining tables, I've just got a dining table job, and they said, we want something that we can upkeep without having to take it back to you to sand off and refinish. So I'm doing Danish oil just because they can scuff it back with 400 grit, get a rag, wipe on Danish oil,
go over it,
brand new, and one day it's brand new again. So
unless, of course, you've got I was supposed to mention this with the barbecue cart. If it's in a position where it's easy to get to, or like in this case, you can actually just remove the whole top quite easily, then I think it's a different story. But it's those real, when you're going through slats of chairs and stuff like that, you can never really, and as you say, no one ever wants to anyway. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Everyone has the best intention, but as soon as they realize how much work after the first 10 minutes of sanding, they're like, nah.
Yeah.
That's why I have so many machines that do it for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Sanding is just so overrated.
So
with
that, I'm quite interested. Unless, Joey, do you have any more?
What was I going to say? I had something. I've lost it.
No. So I've got one thing which is related to what I do, and that is epoxies. Because I do those hollow core surfboards and laminations of paddles and stuff. And there's epoxies out there which will say they're UV stable, but the truth is there's no such thing as a UV stable epoxy. It's got a few inhibitors, but it's impossible. So often you can get away with using a non-UV stable product if you go over it with a marine grade varnish, which has got UV inhibitors or things like that. And that's actually used a lot in the wooden surfboard realm. They'll go an epoxy over the actual board and for its fiberglassing, but then they'll have to apply a marine varnish on top of the epoxy.
Does that really stuff up repairs? Because presumably you can repair epoxy and it will stick to itself. But then if you've got this varnish somewhere over it, you have to sand it back and redo
you'll have to sand it back, because on a repair, if you're going to do it right, you're not just going to fill the hole with a bit of resin. You'll want to apply a bit of cloth over it and stuff. So you'll sand back the area, do your repair, and then feather it in, and then do a few coats over it. But wooden surfboards aren't as easy to repair as a conventional surfboard anyway. So it's only a little bit of extra work.
Talking about that marine, is it spar varnish? Is that
spar varnish? That's a version of it.
I've seen a lot of the Americans use that. Is that something that is used quite frequently here in Australia and New Zealand?
If you go to any boat supply, like here we have Yacht Grop, they've got shelves and shelves of this sort of varnish. It's just specialized.
And does it work like it? I mean, is it a lot hardier than a normal exterior grade varnish?
Oh, it is a lot more durable for sure, because it's out getting elements from reflective from the water as well, and sun and everything. But it comes with a price tag.
I've used spar a few times, and I'm trying to think of the brands. There's a couple of other brands that say they're marine grade, and you have to go to a specialty shop for it. Apart from a 2-pot version, I haven't found a single pot spar marine grade varnish that actually does what it says it does. Like I've seen it break down just as quickly as a regular cheap polyurethane as well. Whether or not that's my finishing problem, I'm not sure, but
yeah, I guess it comes down to a lot of the product development as well.
Yeah, and the temperature
could be
of the day, anything. Yeah.
It could be developed for an American market that's sold over here.
That's
and then
right.
It's not prepared for our massive UV
climate.
index.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, interesting stuff.
I think ultimately nothing lasts forever, and that's just the way it's going to be. We've still got to accept it. We've got to keep our scarras on hand.
I just think we should oil stuff that's outside and not worry about film finishes.
So a while ago, George, you put out a video. I can't remember which one it was, but I commented on the video. You used boiled linseed oil on it. It was a table, and I was surprised that you had used linseed oil on an internal table. I tried that not too long ago, and it's I didn't realize the sheen that you could get.
Oh, you can get a beautiful finish on it. You just have to be willing to put up with the smell for a while.
The dry time, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other one, but. Yeah, I was really surprised. It's kind of changed my outlook on oils a little bit, because I've always seen them as that's what you put on cricket bats. You don't you don't finish with it. There's always got to be some kind of a polyurethane or something in there. But
I think there's that same perception for Danish oil. I think I get that feeling from some of the American video makers and stuff, that Danish oil is like just for the beginner because you can just wipe it on and it's finished. But I can get a glass smooth, full gloss sheen from Danish oil or teak oil, and it looks like I've sprayed it. It feels like it's been sprayed. The trick is just my trick for Danish oil is I do 2 coats on the first day without anything in between, and once I can start feeling some grain being raised and it's a bit rough, I block it back with 400, do another coat, block it back again with 400 grit, block it back again with 1,000 grit, and after that 1,000 grit sanding, I just put just enough Danish oil on my rag to just dampen the surface and get that sheen back, but not enough to puddle anything, and really just buffing it kind of glossy, and that's it. Done.
Do you find that you have to like lubricate sand, so wet sand?
No, I've never done that with.
Because every time I've tried to do it with oil, it just gums up too quickly. But it could be the oil I'm using. Yeah, it could be the oil I'm using.
Yes, but I do find you've got to let it dry hard. Like I'll do a coat, and if I want to sand that coat of oil, I've really got to wait a full day for it to cure. I would say in our temperature range would be the similar. If it was colder, you're probably waiting a couple of days for it to actually cure. And even then, sometimes it gums up. My theory is as soon as if I start sanding and it starts to gum, I'll just stop. It's just not dry enough. It's got to be hard enough to sand. So
interesting.
Yeah.
All right. What do you use timber-wise?
Well, this is the bit that I'm really interested to hear from you guys, because all I've ever used outdoors is treated pine, and I used Oregon pine once. Oregon. Those are the only 2 that I've ever used outdoor.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can use anything you want. It's just how long you want it to last. So obviously you're not going to use a wood that is, prone to falling apart if you want it to last for a long while. So here, my number 1 choice is either going to be Jarrah, because it's just resilient as all hell. It won't get attacked by insects. It's got really strong and dense grain to it. It doesn't fall apart in the sun.
I have a story for you about Jarrah, but we'll get to that in a sec. It does get attacked by insects. My house nearly fell down. But anyway.
Well, it can, but it's less prone to it. Just put a little bit of pine next to it. It'll be fun. Spotted gum is another good one. And the thing that's really nice about spotted gum is that the tannin content is a lot less than most eucalypts in that. So you will get less staining and all of that. But
the only way I can get spotted gum, as far as I know, is to buy it in 65 by 65 kind of posts that they use for power pole crossings.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no other like flat sawn pieces here, as far as I know.
I'll send you some. Just be on a shipping
container.
Yeah. But obviously, the reason people love teak and those sorts of things for outdoor furniture is because it has a really high wax and resin content built into the wood. So it's naturally protected against a lot of the decay that other woods will find.
And right, so that resin and that oil that's part of the preservation of the timber, so that helps it.
Exactly. That's why it's used so much in boats as well, because it just loves to repel water.
The real deal teak from Burma is something to do with their soil picking up silica out of the ground, and that silica, is what we get silicon from, and that gets into the timber and kind of waterproofs it from the inside out. But it does make the timber pretty hard to machine. Well, not hard. It's not hard to machine, but it's blunting.
Just dulls your blades a lot with the silicon. Yeah, it's like cutting through sand.
Yeah, that's the one. And same with. So my choice would be Iroko, because most people can't afford. Most people, can't afford teak because it is just outrageously priced. Have you worked with Iroko?
I've never heard of it. It might have a different name.
It's African, and sometimes it's called poor man's teak, where it's essentially the same timber to work with, but it's a lot cheaper. It's probably half the price. Yeah, and it's the same waxy kind of sandpapery, gritty kind of timber. It's a lot more unstable than teak. Right. And so, like, if you can ever avoid it, never rip a piece of Iroko in half. Like, try and get pieces that are almost the size you want. Because
otherwise, it reacts.
As soon as you rip it in half, it bananas like you wouldn't believe, and you'll waste the whole stick just by planing it flat again. You'll just never get your dimension out of it. I learned that the hard way. So,
I've learned the hard way many a time.
Yes. So Pelly's one.
Before you guys move on, I just wanted to ask quickly about the high silica count. I believe paper bark, George, you might know, paper bark is the same deal?
Yeah. A lot of the kind of swampy trees around here tend to have a fair bit. I couldn't tell you any names off the top of my head, but paper bark does ring a bell.
Is it milled, or is it just kind of chopped as windfall or?
Well, I think over east it's more more ready or more available, I should say.
Yeah, we got heaps of it.
So it does get milled a lot, but it is considered firewood by most people. Like if it's on your farm, you'll cut it down for firewood.
I've just got a big chunk of it outside as part of that wood that I've got. And I was worried that when I take it to the sawmill, the guy's going to look at it and say, not a chance, I'm not putting my blade near that. Is it that bad, or am I expecting too much of that? That it's not going to be like going through a rock.
No, it's not that bad. I mean, you just have to keep your tools sharp, and once you start realizing that you're not getting very good results, so whether you're planing it or chopping mortises by hand, just go back and sharpen your tools.
Right.
It's not impossible to work. It's just it will dull your tools a lot faster than most. So yeah.
Probably, I find like if I'm milling teak, I would say I'd have to say if I was hand planing teak, I would have to resharpen twice as much as I usually would.
Yeah, I think people that use a lot of teak have special actual blades as well. Like it's got different grinds on it. And
I'd say you could probably you'd probably decrease your grind angle. You'd probably go down to like 25 degrees or something, and you'd get a slightly longer cut life, but not necessarily as clean.
Yeah, the finish might deteriorate or whatever.
That'd be interesting to think about.
But yeah, I mean, the other really good option, which is what you've used, Rob, is treated pine. I mean, it's not going to be pretty as a lot of our hardwoods, but it's cheap, it's easy to get to. Or Meranti, is it? Or Meranti's okay for outdoor.
Right.
Yeah, Marabou is also really good, used in decking.
Yeah, and I was going to say some decking timbers, Quilera, Vitex.
Yeah. But really, I think it comes down to where your piece is going to be. If it's full sun, you're not going to have much luck with any wood. It's gonna grey no matter what. But if it's sheltered and out of the wind and all that sort of stuff, You can use almost anything.
I was going to say, when you were mentioning pine, slightly going back to the finishing, that if you're using LOSP treated pine, which is a kind of treatment. LOSP treatment is essentially where they inject a series of white spirit chemicals.
Right.
And there's various types of those chemicals. I looked it up, but they're too hard and long to say, and there's too many of them. But essentially what that is like your wet treated pine. So it's the stuff that you might build your fence out of or something. If you go to the timber yard and they leave it outside and it's so sopping wet when you pick it up. Some people will build their like a picnic table or something out of that, which is perfectly fine. It's not going to rot. But if you intend to stain it or finish it in any way, it's recommended that you actually leave it for up to 12 weeks strip stacked to let
dry out a bit more.
Well, yeah, actually the chemicals have got to evaporate.
Oh, right.
Yes,
so it has to flash off.
Yeah, the water is going to be present because they inject it diluted with water. But those chemicals will definitely react with any stained pigments and stuff that go on there. So I guess you could build your picnic table wet and let it dry off naturally for a month or two and then stain it. But
now the deck that I built in my old house in Adelaide, when I was building that, I heard this story from so many people, but my next door neighbor, Chippy, he said, no, don't worry about it. Just put the stain on. Now I was using one of these decking stains, the water-based ones, which is almost, it's basically like a thinned down paint. It's not a stained stain. So that goes on, and the timber must have been, well, I mean, I got it from the mill. I mean, I don't know how long it was sitting at the lumberyard, but I got it, built the deck all within a week and stained it and looked fine. But as I say, it wasn't a traditional, stain that actually penetrates the wood. It was one of these. I've actually got a tin of it here. It's these.
Oh yeah, I know those things. Yeah.
And these are obviously the cheap and nasty ones, but if you're going to be refinishing a deck every 6 months to a year, that's what you use.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I heard the story as well, but in my experience, didn't really make too much of a difference.
Was the timber really wet?
It wasn't hugely wet, but after about 6 months in the sun, the gaps had gone from, I think I started with about 2 mil, it opened up to about 5.
Right.
Yeah.
So it had shrunk a bit, but then having said that, in Adelaide in Adelaide it's hot, dry summers and then cold, wet or humid, wet winters. So it's the two polar opposites. So back in winter, they were almost touching again. So it was moving that much.
Might have been like a H3 treated, or
that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
There's 3 types of treatment. So you got boron treatment, which is what your pine house studs would be treated to, and it's generally H1.2. And then you've got either CCA treatment or boron, or LOSP. So we just talked about the AWST, which is the white spirits injecting into it. The CCA is also an H3.2 treatment, but it's a dry. So often that'll come out as KD, kiln dried off the shelf as H3.2, and it's a copper chromate, something rather. And that will take a finish straight away, and generally is pretty dry, even if they kept it outside.
That must be the same one then. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was H3. Yeah.
So on the ends of your sticks of lumber, they'll have either LOSP stamped in or CCA, and then so you can kind of tell which is which.
Or you just get it, use it, and then hope for the best.
Yeah. And then
I've never done that, but
yeah.
That deck that I built was such a pain because I think Adelaide the weather in Adelaide is just awful from that perspective because, as I say, it's 40 degrees and 5% humidity in the summer, and then you're down to 15 degrees and 90% humidity with constant rain in the winter. Yeah. And I went for a boardwalk, I think that's what they call it, a boardwalk style deck, where it had a big 120 mil piece wrapping around it. So sort of the deck board's busted into.
Mitre around.
And at that mitre, it would, I swear it was like a 10 mil gap depending on the season. And so I managed to get some, because there was nothing I could do. The miter just opened and closed. I tried screwing it in and plugging the gaps, and it just, it eventually stopped opening like this and just started opening like this. So I got some gap filler, tinted it the same color, tried that, and that just it was the last time I ever tried and do something like that, because there was just so much movement, and I just always attributed that to the fact that it was pine.
Yeah, I mean, I've had this idea in my head to kind of fill those joints with a cork strip, so you know it would expand a little bit and compress a little bit, and it'll keep those gaps. I've never tried it, but it's something I've always thought about.
I mean, I've got a pine deck at the moment. It's only 2 years old, and I've got almost 20 mil gap between some of my pieces, and it shrunk on the length up to 15 mil, some of them.
On the length?
Yeah. It's just, the sun has just sucked the life out of this timber. So it's just, and I think part of the problem is if you buy the really wet decking, like the loss treated decking, it's so wet and it's massive, it's all swollen up. You can't, even if you lay the decking boards tight together, they're going to shrink some, and you're going to get big gaps, let alone when it's so wet like a sponge, and it shrinks down almost a third of its size
by the time you finish screwing in that plank.
Give it 6 months in the sun and it's like half the size of it was before. So
well, I went into decking with the idea of, this is my first deck, I'm going to go the cheap option, I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars as a newbie trying to put in a deck, and everything that I'd read had said, if you put in pine, that's fine. Just be expected, to go the maintenance route, because that's part of using pine. And so I was totally okay with it. But having now actually done it, all those guys that I was reading in the forum saying they'll never use pine again, I'm now one of those guys. It's going to be Merbu or Mobile, however you say it, or more expensive, because it has to be stable.
I must be the only one that's had luck with pine. I've done one fully exposed deck outside, and it's great. I mean, it's grayed a lot, which I like the look of. It's what I went for, but it hasn't moved around. It's just kind of how I did it 3 years ago.
Oh, that's nice.
So suck it.
Hey, Jordan, what timber are you using for the table at the moment?
The one I'm doing is black butt, so it's mostly a budget thing, but it is a good timber for outdoors. It's quite resinous and it has good treatment. So
are you doing anything fancy have you considered the joinery or how things are going together?
I have, yeah. So that's a point that I've brought, is the construction considerations, and that mainly the big thing that I'm worried about is water traps. So there's no exposed screw heads, which is countersunk, because that's where water will sit and seep into. The only bad thing that I have had to do is I've had to, because it's a framed top, it's a mitered frame, and then slats in the middle, I've made it so that the frame is rebated and the slats sit down on top. So there is a shelf for water to collect, but I know that this is going undercover, so it's not concerning me too much.
I have thought in that case, I've done similar things, and I considered making that shelf on like a 3-degree angle or something.
Yeah, okay,
but it's so much extra work to do it.
The biggest concern I have about this table is those miters. It's a mitered table. I mean, it's pretty dense and stable wood, but I just have a feeling those miters will open up ever so slightly.
You need to get into your Japanese joinery and do like a mitered half lap.
Yeah.
Well, surely if you just use quite a few splines on each miter, that should surely stop it, or do you think?
I mean, I've gone long tannins. I mean, not super long. It's only 90 mil wide apron, so
okay.
It's not massive. But I've gone long tannins for it, and I'll be epoxying those in, and then using a polyurethane glue for the rest of it. So it's going to be pretty damn held together by joinery, but it's still always there. I mean, it's going to move a little bit. So.
Yeah, I'm at some point I'll be building an outdoor table and probably hopefully some chairs for the new house. And I'm thinking, I've been racking my brain about where to keep it, just because it is so exposed. I've got nowhere to put it. It's just going to be outside on the deck. I actually think I will get a custom canvas cover
to keep over
it, and that way I can actually keep it looking like wood instead of like a silver beast.
See, I refinished a long slab. It would have been like, thinking back to it, maybe 3 to 3.5 meters long. Just a single slab, and it was the worst. It was even worse than the table that you're having to refinish now, Joey. Like just worst construction I've seen. But I had to refinish it for them. It's what they wanted. And this thing was twisted to probably about 150 mil out from low point to low point.
Holy shit.
So I just told them I can sand it back, but I can't do much about a twist.
Yeah.
But this thing was obviously the prized piece of their collection because they had a long canvas, like a boat cover.
Right.
Custom made to the shape of the slab that they kept over it. And it still
well,
didn't do anything for it.
It protected it from getting silver.
Yeah. But
I think that's all I'm getting at is in terms of like the whole finishing thing, just cover it up and take the cover off when you want to use it, and you see this pretty thing, and you only see it for an hour a day or whatever. But
yeah, I mean, it might be worth doing.
Just before we move on, Darren's asked about Purple Heart. Now, I know we've talked about Purple Heart in the past. I don't know very much about it, so I'm quite interested. Is that an exterior wood? Would you use it externally?
It is, as far as I know, it's the second hardest timber out there. It's used for building docks and piers, and like they drive it into the floor of the ocean. So it's not going anywhere. Is it stable? In my experience, yes. As a furniture maker, as I've seen here, they sell it as decking, and it moves like you wouldn't believe. It cups. They try and sell the wide boards here, like 140 by. Well, they were selling 140 by 20, and then they put grooves on the back to try and stop it cupping. And then they went to saying, oh, you should put 3 screws in it instead of 2 to try and keep it flat, and then it just splits. And so then they went and they'll sell decking as 140 by 40 now, and then you just like spending a small fortune on Purple Heart. And then
that's good though that they make it that size, I think, because I haven't heard of that here in Australia. Everything's 20 or 22.
Yeah, well, even Vitex here, because of the same problem, Vitex and Quilla, you get 140 by 40 or 38 or something like that. Just because...
Yeah, we get 38 in some species.
Okay,
hard to come by.
Yeah, I've never seen it, yeah.
I mean, it's not in Bunnings. Usually it's in actual direct wholesalers or trade places.
I personally wouldn't go down the route of Purple Heart for a deck unless you are going to keep it purple, which is just about impossible because it's like what else does it? I'm not sure. No. So Purple Heart is like sun reactive. So when you first cut it, it's like brown. It's pretty ugly looking. Put it in the sun for 20 minutes and it goes bright purple. And the longer it's in the sun, the darker and richer the purple gets, as long as it's in light. If you leave it in direct sunlight, it's just going to turn silver within probably a month. So it's kind of, what's the point if you're paying all that money for?
That's technical. I just as a rookie, like wood is wood, like that is a brown piece of wood. It will always be a brown piece of wood.
Yep.
That sounds
it like oxidizes, or I don't think the word's oxidization, but it's whatever it is, photoreactive or whatever from the sun. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, I've never worked with it, but
it's really hard. Like I could do like 2 passes with my plane and then go sharpen it up and then come back 2 passes because
do it again.
Yeah, otherwise it just tears out. That you've super sharp blade to actually slice the grain, and then it's blunt. Go start again.
Yeah.
So my dining, I've got a dining set up on my deck, which I've had for 2 years, and it was one of these what you buy from the local furniture chains. It's one of these cheap. I think it's Indonesian or from somewhere around there. So I don't know what type of wood it is. It's quite
some rainforest timber.
Yeah, it's quite oily. But this thing I don't know, like whoever made it, I would assume he's not a professional carpenter, but whoever made it, this thing is amazing. Full on sun all day, and this thing's, all the miters are still perfect. And I look at that table and I think that is about as cheap and nasty as you can get, but that's still holding together. So does that just come down to the timber or the construction?
Well,
It'd be both.
Yeah.
I mean, having not seen it, but it would have to be a bit of both.
Because when it gets warm, you can actually see some of the oils coming out of the timber.
Right. Okay.
Like,
Well, that's probably a lot of it. It's like teak. I made a little teak shower stool, and I screwed it together with stainless screws and then epoxied teak plugs in over the screw heads. And I was expecting them just to expand and pop out. They haven't moved. And then the thing still looks like it did the day I made it. And so, that timber just will not absorb water. And if you've got other timbers that are that oily, that's, I think, really going to help just keep the timber stable. Like if the water can't get in there to do the damage, you're halfway there. And obviously, if it's not in direct sunlight, if it's somewhat sheltered, that's also helping.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Well, do you guys have any other bits that you want to talk about?
I do have a note just coming down to design of things, because I touched on it earlier. Wood moves a lot more when it's outside, but because of that, I would say when it comes to designing your furniture or your outdoor piece, you're better off to not do things like solid tops, because movement is a lot harder to contain. So just do planks, which is floating. It can move around. Then water can drip off it, and also things like doing breadboard ends. If you do decide on a solid top, breadboard ends are a great idea to keep it flat, but you're going to have 20 mil oversized mortises for your tenons to move around in. That it's just going to be really hard to keep those designs stable and steady and all of that sort of stuff. So I seen oh god, the name's just escaped me. But someone did a big outdoor table on YouTube. Yeah, Matt Cremona. And he's done breadboard ends and used massive wide single piece slabs, and it's just.
But his weather does seem to be generally cooler than hotter.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but he's all the way up in Michigan, so that's right on the border of Canada.
Climate, yeah.
So,
but if we did something like that here, you're asking for nothing but trouble.
I was actually thinking about his table, and then thinking the other night, how could I design something similar for our climate? And what I came up with was to have your planks with, like, say, 5 mil gaps between them as your top. You could still put a breadboard end on the end and have a central mortise on each plank coming to a breadboard end, and each of those could actually be fully glued in place, I think. And then those boards would still do what they need to do. Because they've got gaps, and the mortise is, say, in the center third of the plank, and so it's only held in the center third still. The outside edges of the boards, each plank can still do what it needs to do, and it's going to hold the top flat. That way you can still do a cantilever off the base frame if you needed to. So that's the way I was thinking about it.
Yeah, I think I'd have to draw it out. I think
that's
in essence, that would work. Yeah, as long as you got two halves of it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. What's this?
We've got a question there from Jason for you, Joey.
Are there commercially grown hardwoods in New Zealand that are straight grained, cheap and good for painted projects, kind of like poplar?
I guess we got to define cheap, because so pine is cheap, but
pine is cheap. And so if you go to somewhere that specializes in good timber, not just Mitre 10 or Bunnings or whatever.
Yeah, nothing wrong with Bunnings.
Okay. I just can't use their timber area. It's like too difficult. So our clear pine is pretty bloody good, and it's cheap. If you go to, say, BBS Timbers, go to their website. That's who I use all the time. Their pine, like I just picked up 185 by 19 dress boards. Each one of them is 2.4 long, and it's like $3 a meter or something.
Wow.
And it's clear. It's just so cheap, and you can buy it by the bundle. So that's probably it. I actually have recently talked to a lady close to me who has a tree farm. She's just taken it over from her grandparents or something, and they've actually got a forest of Tasmanian blackwood and beech and oak and all sorts of stuff, which it's the first time I've heard of in this country, having a forest that's now mature and ready to fell. And she wants me to cut a tree down and build something with her blackwood.
Wow.
And have it as a showpiece so she can sell the wood to other furniture makers. So that is, so there is a source, but not right now for hardwood. Yeah.
So is there anywhere in New Zealand that does small, like kiln drying operations? So not huge commercial for those sorts of people? Or
there is a company, Hermpac, or used to be Herman Pacific. They have a kiln not far from me, just north of Auckland. They primarily kiln dry cedar for joinery. They've got just stacks and stacks of cedar, but they apparently will let you throw in a stack of wood into their kiln. As long as it's like relatively not too dense. The denser the timber, the longer it takes, and they can't afford. They can't have the time in the kiln. So, yeah. Yeah,
it is hard to have a mixed species kiln, but
yeah,
just interesting to know.
Yep. All right.
What about Kauri?
What about Kauri? It's pretty much not available. You can get Indonesian Kauri, Fijian Kauri, which are a bit softer than our stuff, although our stuff is still pretty soft. It really, just to put the damper on things, Kauri is red pine. That's all it is. It just happens to be massive trees that were dead straight with no limbs on it, so you get perfect planks. If you wanted to buy Kauri, I say go to Nikau Demolition in Auckland, but you're going to pay through the nose for it. So,
all right.
Someone, Jason, you just said BBS is 6 hours away. They will ship to you. You just give them a call, tell them what you want. They will pick it, wrap it up, ship it to you. You have to pay.
I assume that's pretty big. That's gonna be pretty big orders, isn't it?
No, you could bring them up. I've seen them just wrap up a single stick of wood and send it out. They'll wrap it up in plastic, put it on a truck.
Cool.
Yeah, we got a similar Oz Tim over here will do that, but they do it a $35 cartage if you're not collecting.
Yeah, I mean, you'll pay for
delivery.
Right, you pay for the cartage, but it's if you're somewhere where you don't have a local good hardwood supplier, it's the only way to go. And the guys at BBS know what they're doing. They're really good guys. Tell them I sent you, and they'll give you a good deal.
You heard it here first, folks. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I've never looked into this sort of buying it online, but I think I need to, because as you say, George, it's $35. But really, if you play your cards right and you're smart about it, you get all your timber in that load. And
totally. I mean, for me, if I'm building something out of, let's say, Vic Ash, so something I don't usually stock on the shelf, I'll call Oz Tim, I'll tell them what I require. I mean, I've got their catalogue, in multiple pages in my office here. And they will have it picked and ready for the next day and delivered to me on a flatbed if I need it. But if the order's less than, I think, at $600, it's going to be $88 for the delivery.
Right.
And then also $35 for their guy to go and pick it. So the clients have to obviously cover the cost of that. So for me, I will just go and get it if it's not a big order. Yeah. But it is available. That's the point.
Right. I think we've cracked on enough.
Yeah. So let's get on to who we're watching. I'll go first for this one.
Yep.
So there's a guy by the name of Joe I seem to make friends with a lot of people whose name starts with a J. A guy by the name of Joe who's out in Arizona. He has a channel called Homesteadonomics. It's more based around, as the name suggests, homesteading. But he does a lot of building, and he's recently built a shipping container built a workshop out of a shipping container. But it's not just like he put the shipping container down and said, now I'm going to fit it out. He actually cut the shipping container in half and gave away the one half and then fitted the other half out. And it was really interesting. So he does a whole lot of homesteading around his house. So water management, because he's in the desert. As I say, built his workshop. At the moment, he's building a small cubby house for his daughter. Really interesting channel if you enjoy homesteading. I really do. Homesteadonomics, definitely check it out. Tell Joe I said hi. He won't give you a discount, but he might.
Jordan?
Let's say 2 or 3 I've been watching. The newest channel for me is The Minimalist Maker. I found her on was making a chair from oak. I think that's the title of it. And I was quite into it. I watched it. I liked it.
Yep.
On top of that, which is not woodworking, but it's a cool channel nonetheless, is Physics Anonymous. They're currently restoring a metal lathe, and the guys just have good fun in doing it. And then I lost my note of it, but I'm sure I can see it somewhere. There was another one. I've lost it, but
All right.
Well, yeah, think about that while Joey's giving.
I'll find it while you go, Joe.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't had time to watch a lot this week because it's just crazy here, but I have been watching Zach from ZH Fabrications. He does
Herbert
Holtz.
Yeah.
Yep. He does stuff that's so far out of my wheelhouse. Like, I know what he's doing. He makes a lot of, he works with steel a lot and a little bit of timber. So I can watch his videos and I know what he's doing. I know the process, but I have got no clue what he's doing. And I love that I can watch somebody make something and I've got no idea what's happening. And then there's a cool made thing at the end. And I guess that's a bit like when people watch my videos, I think, maybe. I'm not sure. But it's interesting having that feeling of what the hell's going on. Oh, look, there's a cool thing. I like that.
So you're sort of saying like it's all the bits coming together make no sense, and then bam at the end.
And I've got no idea what he's doing. Welding bits of stuff. I don't know the process. I do not work with metal, and so watching someone who is creatively working with metal rather than just making boxes is really interesting.
So, some might argue that that's poor storytelling because he's not taking you along for the ride. But I agree with you. Jimmy DeRessa does the same sort of. I used to find the same thing with him because there's very little storytelling. So he's just welding this and hammering this, and suddenly it's a thing.
Sometimes I'd skip to the end of his video just to see what the heck he's making, and then come back to where I was.
Yeah, similar sort of vibe.
So I found the other guy I was watching.
Oh yeah.
It's Timothy Wilmots. He's a bit of a veteran. He's quite a large channel, but if you don't know him, he's just got some really nice equipment. He's a Felder and Stool kind of guy.
Oh, is he a German fella?
Yeah, German. I think he's German. Somewhere over there anyway.
He's just made that cart, that lift-up cart thing.
Yeah, the multifunction.
I've seen like 3 seconds of it, and I was like, what the hell's going on?
I do not have the patience to design something like that.
All Maker's Workshop. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But that was that's the other one. So
Yeah,
there is one more, which I've only just found, which I feel bad about, and that is a Robin Lewis 2. It's Rob's vlog.
I've been watching that as well.
That one. Yeah. Didn't know you had that. I felt bad when I found it.
I enjoy doing the vlog stuff. It's a good little side project while you're waiting for glue to dry.
Yeah, it's good fun. And it's a good vlog too. I get into it. I've watched all of them now.
Cool.
Cheers. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. I'm just seeing all the people in the chat. We had a fair bit of chat going on tonight, which is great. As I said in the beginning, the chat is really for you guys in the chat to have a conversation while we talk. But as we go through, if stuff comes up that's interesting, we will get to it as we did tonight. So thanks again for watching, everyone. Obviously, thank you to Joey and Jordan. And I guess we will talk to you guys next Thursday at the same time. This podcast will be available on SoundCloud and YouTube after this. So if you haven't managed to catch the whole thing, it will be there. But other than that, enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon.
See you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.